So, good morning, everybody. I'm Donatella Ponziani, and I would like to welcome all the participants and the panelists to the workshop in Orbit Economy, from space innovation to business development. This workshop is a part of the ESA Downstream Gateway series of workshops aiming at stimulating a vibrant and dynamic European commercial ecosystem to realize green and digital transformation based on societal and economic needs and priorities. Today, we wanted to talk about new space business. The event today is foreseen to trigger the discussion among our distinguished speakers on how space environment can boost commercial solution through the involvement of private actors in experimenting aboard the European facilities on suborbital flights. The ESA Agenda 2025, I point how ESA and its partners need to evolve to boost commercialization in the European ecosystems, especially in the space sector, focusing on three key ingredients: talent, access to capital, and fast innovation. And with our speakers, we are going to tackle also this point, how to better involve new generation of talents, new generation of motivated people in our ecosystem, how to better cooperate and partner with private investors, with private sector in order to make the life of our industry, startup, mid-cap, SME, and large companies better and different, how to move ourselves in the new space environment, and how to go faster into innovation, not only technological innovation, but also business innovation, adapting our business model, fostering new business model. This morning, we have in front of us two panels. The first one is dedicated to space commercialization, zero gravity innovation. And the second panel is dedicated on how space innovation fosters new markets. Both panels will be followed by a Q&A session where we are strongly inviting all the attendees and the participants to take part and to leave their comments and questions in the Q&A section of the WebEx where you are connected. And now, without any further delay, I would like to hand over the floor to the moderator of the first panel, my colleagues, Charlotte Mathieu, who is the Industrial Policy and Economic Analysis section of the European Space Agency. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Donatella. Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be with you today to moderate this first panel. I will start by introducing our four distinguished speakers of this first panel of the morning. So first of all, I would like to introduce Luisa Innocenti, who is the head of the Clean Space Office and the project manager of the Clear Space One mission at the European Space Agency. Our second speaker will be Bernard Offenbach, who is also a colleague from ESA, is the commercialization and innovation team leader in our Directorate for Human and Robotic Exploration. Our third speaker will be Professor Ferenc Darvas, who is the CEO and president of the company InnoStudio. And our last speaker will be Vincenzo Giorgio, who is the CEO of Altec. So I will start with Luisa Innocenti. Luisa, you're working on new markets. How are you working with commercial actors to stimulate the commercial activities and create these new markets?
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Donatella. Now, I am the European Space Agency. I work for the European Space Agency. So I will give you the perspective of the European Space Agency, which is this one. If the market does already exist, basically you do not need ESA. ESA is a public entity which is there to create new tools, innovation, research, and create new market. So our role, we see our role into being there, when you are very close to the market, but not yet there, by, for example, paying the first mission to, for example, active debris removal, or the first European mission for automated in-orbit servicing. So it's really on that particular moment in which you cannot be sure that the market is there. You have some indications. Sometimes these indications have been there for years, in which people are talking about this, are saying this will be the new market, but actually there is no investment yet on that one. So if we can come at that moment, and also, sorry, let me say another thing, and also sometimes this kind of, particularly in my field, this kind of mission require new technologies which have not yet been demonstrated in space. So if we are in this context, we are there as ESA to pay for the first mission to prove that it can be done and to prove that there could be a market.
Thank you, Luisa. That's very clear. Well, let's now talk about active debris removal and about the business model that you can see for, or the potential business models that you could see for active debris removal. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So active debris removal. I would distinguish the situation into two parts: the future satellite, the future possible debris, and the old one. The situation has changed for active debris removal with the coming in of the so-called mega constellation. Why? Because today there is a big awareness of the issue of space debris. I don't think I need to elaborate on the fact that space debris is an issue. We are doing more and more collision avoidance maneuver, and there are so many debris that it might be that in the future we might lose some of the best orbits we have. So I think that the awareness on the implementing the proper end of life of the satellite is there. Now, in order to end the life of a satellite, you need to kill your satellite, if you will. You need to end the life. You need to perform the passivation, you need to perform the orbiting activities. Or you can equip your satellite to be removed by a servicer, or in case of failure. So I think that it is clear that for the mega constellation, but also for other satellites, and in particular at ESA, we are preparing the future Sentinel in case to be removed in case of failure. There is going to be a service, okay? Because we will need to remove them. The situation is a bit different for the past debris, the one which we have already launched, for which there was no awareness that we were polluting. I have a personal point of view. I cannot even say that I represent ESA on this one, because on this topic, everybody has his own idea. My personal point of view is this: we will not clean it up until there is a major disaster. That's the human being, in my opinion. That's the way it is. And in case there is a major disaster, we will need to raise funds at world level, not at European level. It will have to be led by UN, maybe, possibly with a tax on all future launchers. I don't know how it will come, the cleaning up of the past. That one I'm a bit more skeptical. On the future, there is also something which is being studied and which I strongly support, but I don't know when it will be implemented, that before any launch, the operator has to pay a deposit, like with the bottles. You get back the deposit only if you perform a proper end of life. If you don't, the deposit will stay there to pay the tow truck, which will clean. So I'm 100% in favor of this tax for the future launcher, which is not a tax, in my opinion, in a way, because you can get it back. If you behave in a proper way, you get it back. But you can very well see that all of this has to be implemented at European level, at worldwide level, sorry, not only at European level.
Thank you, Luisa. That's very clear, and you have distinguished two different cases. In all of that, what do you see as the opportunities for the European industry? And there might be many of them.
So, as ESA, we are giving contract to European industry or member states industry. So, for example, for the active debris removal mission, we are, which would be the first one worldwide, we are giving a contract to the European, a European consortium to lead this, to perform this mission. So there are a lot of opportunities, if you want. The only caveat that I would like to say in my field is this. When you perform active debris removal, when you perform in-orbit servicing, you are approaching a debris, or you are approaching even a working satellite. And depending whether you do it in GEO or in LEO, if you are in LEO, you will have also to re-enter. So we are performing, let me call them dangerous operations, meaning if you hit the satellite, you will create even more debris, or you will destroy the debris. And if you are in LEO, you need to respect the space debris mitigation guidelines. Therefore, you need to leave the protected area at the end of life, which might mean re-entering into Earth, which means that you need to prove that you have a risk of casualty on ground, which is lower than 10⁻⁴. Therefore, we are performing operations which need to be safe. Okay. Therefore, we will check. Everybody is welcome, and we are doing calls. We are asking ideas, but please bear in mind that there is a minimum technical threshold which is necessary to perform this operation, and we will check on them.
Thank you, Luisa. May I ask you one last question, and coming back to the European industry, and overall, how do you perceive the role of the European industry into all of that? You mentioned that this is a global issue, and the role of ESA to ensure that industry will be well positioned.
The role of the European industry is to compete, if you want, to stay afloat with the competition. For what concerns active debris removal, nobody has ever done this mission worldwide, so Europe would be the first. But if you talk about in-orbit servicing, at the moment, Europe is not the first. The Americans are already performing such missions. So we are a bit catching up, and in order to bridge this gap, as ESA, we are asking for in-orbit servicing proposal request to prepare for the next ministerial. The other difficulty that I see, for which we need to have a strong European position, is this one, which is, let me say, a funny one. We Europeans, we become Europe when there is external enemies. If we talk about refueling, if you talk removing, the operators are often asking for standard interfaces on board the future satellite, so that is not unique. It's not only one operator, one servicer who could remove them. We had started moving on this with the ESA, and there was a strong competition among the European industry. I want my interface on board. I am a big prime. I will never put the interface of the other one on my satellite. Until the Americans came and started to say, we already have standard interface. Why don't you put on board of your own satellite our interface so that we can come and service you? And then finally, we see the European industry coming up united and say, we need to have standard interface at European level on board of our future satellite in order to allow in-orbit servicing in the future. So I think that we, on some aspect, we are at the forefront of innovation. On others, we are a little bit lacking behind and we need to catch up. And one key point is going to be the standardization of the interfaces.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you. I will now pass the floor to Bernard Offenbach. So we will discuss about innovation and innovation now in microgravity. Space is obviously a driver for industrial innovation, and I would like you, Bernard, to tell us how innovation is generated in microgravity, and if there is a specific approach to commercially driven research.
Yeah, I certainly think innovation is driven in multiple ways. So I just give two examples. Firstly, through applied research in space, we develop new knowledge. And this knowledge creates new business cases for terrestrial markets. So that's a clear value chain. But we also currently work a lot on the commercialization of the end-to-end value chain for performing applied research in space. And it includes how we define experiments, how we develop them, how we up and download experiments currently to the International Space Station. We develop new hosting facilities on the ISS, which enable every customer to perform applied research on board the station. And we operate those experiments. All this we're trying to industrialize and commercialize. And as we're doing it, that creates new business cases for services provided in support of applied research in the future. And then, of course, beyond that, we achieve innovation by engaging new actors in the applied research community, which in itself results in new ideas. And the whole commercialization approach provides a lot of visibility on the end-to-end cost of performing an experiment. It puts a lot of pressure on us to optimize service and reduce cost. So then the question is, what is our approach to commercially driven research? Maybe it's first good to define what we mean with commercially driven research. So what we have done a lot in the past is science-driven research where the science community leads. Now for us, commercially driven research means that the application is driving and science is considered as an enabler. Industry is in the lead and the science community is supporting industry. And how do we promote this? I think it only makes sense to promote it if we focus on a particular target market for which research in space offers a new value. And we talk about markets like biotech, food, nutrition, pharma, materials, manufacturing, and some others. So then what is ESA doing in this field? I think the ultimate of ESA is to nurture the creation of a new layer economy. Very much like Louisa said, ESA works in fields where the market doesn't yet exist. So we're trying to stimulate a new market and economy in space. And our idea is that we create an economy consisting on one side of commercial service provider and customers on the other side, with ESA being very much in the background and not really being very visible in this market, only if where we need to be. So we're trying to, try to put in place is what we call a business in space growth network, which consists on one side of partners who stimulate market demand in particular market sectors. On the other side, we put service provider in place who can serve these future markets.
Thank you, Bernard. So you mentioned science-driven versus commercially driven research or user-driven research, application-driven research. How do you deal with failure and risks in this new commercial context, probably very differently from the way it was dealt with for science-driven research?
Well, risk exists on multiple levels, technical, market, programmatic, and failure has to be an option in commercial activities. So risks are acceptable if the reward warrants the risk. And that's the question we need to answer here. And we also need to distinguish risk for ESA, for the commercial actors, for customers. I think in general, for risk management, we need to apply systematically 4 principles, and that applies for all actors. We need to understand the risks for each of the actors. We need to define who owns the risk in this new commercial economy. Then we need to define mitigation to the largest extent possible, but we also need to define controlled exit points for partners in case there's a failure. So risk management has to become a part of any commercial venture. And I think one principle we apply, which we also apply in our international partnerships here, is that every partner is doing best efforts, and we are not taking responsibility for consequential damages, which limits for each partner the risk exposure. I must say, on ESA's side, for the commercial activities we have initiated, we take much more risk than we would do in a nominal procurement. But we also expect then the private sector on their side to take and share the risk we have to take to make this a reality.
Thank you. Can you tell us about interesting, use cases in terms of microgravity innovation from a commercial perspective? Can you introduce some examples?
Well, in the end, we hope that the private sector comes with real innovative use cases, but we're trying to a little bit categorize it. So when we talk about business in space today, I think there's three classical categories. One is commercial research, which leads to process improvement or development of new products. We talk about testing qualification of new services, new technologies. And then we have really the space-based application and services. Now, if you really want to understand the use case, you need to connect these categories to particular target markets. So if you connect this, for example, with the field of manufacturing, then research and technology development could mean that you improve existing materials or manufacturing processes through research in space. You may develop new materials and formulation, which you can then produce back here on Earth. When you talk about technology testing and qualification, we may improve 3D printing or semiconductor manufacturing technology. And when we talk about service and application, we may in future produce in-orbit manufacturing facilities, for example, for fiber lanes and things, zero fiber lanes and things like this for optical communications. So in other words, I think we understand the categories, we understand how the microgravity environment enables new research, but we are working with the private sector and the representatives of different target markets to develop future use cases.
And more generally, beyond working on these specific use cases, is the agency supporting private actors who are willing to do some innovation in microgravity?
Well, in the end, our aim is to engage as many actors as possible in this new LEO economy. And I think we're trying to provide three types of entry services. Firstly, we try to support the end-to-end chain for enabling a new entity to perform research in space, which goes from defining the experiment to implementing it to assessing the outcome. We are trying to help entities to get access to institutional or private sector funding. And we support new players in maturing and delivering a commercial service in this new economy. And essentially, we have different opportunities for these actors in future to engage with us. So today we have various commercial partners established providing service for any customer who wants to do research in space. And anybody who is interested in research can directly engage with these actors, with this service provider. They all operate certain facilities. That's a facility-oriented approach. We are in the process of appointing what we call market managing partners, who basically manage the market simulation program to develop demand in a certain target market. We just appointed the first market managing partner in the field of biotech. And any user can directly engage with this managing partner, and this is a market-oriented approach. We are also working across ESA with different directorates, in particular also TIA, and they will release, TIA is a directorate of telecommunication and integrated application. They will release after summer an announcement of opportunity to co-fund commercial research activities in space. And that means they provide co-funding for new ideas. And then in order to give transparency to all these engagement opportunities, we have established a new digital marketing platform where you can learn about service providers, opportunities, funding schemes, and you find all this information at bsgn.esa.int.
Thank you, Bernard, for this very exhaustive overview of the opportunities, and I invite all the interested people to indeed visit this website. Thank you, Bernard. I will now turn to Professor Ferenc Darvas. Good morning. You're the CEO and president of the InnoStudio company. And I would like to start with the first question, asking you, so from your perspective, we have heard about the agency perspective, how InnoStudio is bridging the gap between this innovation in microgravity and commercial solutions. I'm afraid you're on mute.
Yeah, okay. First, thank you very much for the question, and let me introduce InnoStudio, which is a real private corporation existing for almost 20 years and has been involved in space chemistry for almost 10 years. We have been pioneers here, and the very first corporation dealing with the larger problem of space chemistry, forming international consortiums for space chemistry, where presently we do have more than 40 institutional members for all of the 5 continents, initiating and conducting the first scientific affairs, scientific conferences, together with the American Chemical Society in the States, but in the help of a European institution, the Flow Chemistry Society in Switzerland. We do believe that dissemination of the knowledge how to use the space microgravity and other factors for chemistry and for other technical problems is very important, and that's why a very substantial of our activity is dealing with this problem. The last time we have got just the 6th symposium this year in the States, and we are in the verge to bridge the zero gravity and commercial solutions to a webinar series, which will have the title Drug Discovery in Space. This is based on the fact that we are in the medicinal chemistry, having been in that for decades, and also we are the very first corporation which is dealing with developing and sending chemical reactors to the space, hopefully with the Space Rider in the coming years. In addition, we do have so many chemical reactions and transformations which we perform up to now through the ISS. Some of them I will give you an example. What kind of application of space chemistry I am talking about? So there are so many uses, several dozens. The best should be to suggest to catch the book, which will publish sometimes in the fall by the Wiley in Space Manufacturing and Resource, edited by a German professor, Volker Hessel, presently in Australia. There is a whole chapter dealing with how to use space chemistry for commercial purposes, and many unexpected applications are listed there if you're interested for that.
Thank you for this introduction. Can you tell us how these experiments in low Earth orbit and microgravity is actually boosting the development of your company's terrestrial business? And how would you, as a private actor, define your needs with respect to this overall environment?
Yeah, this is quite a rich problem world, and it's worth to categorize the business opportunities which coming from, as you were formulating, zero gravity innovation. The first and the very most important category is when we here in the Earth bump into serious and important and urgent problem which we cannot solve it here within with the Earth. There are so many issues we were meeting with our COVID-related research. There is a kind of a collaborative corporation here in the network of where the InnoStudio belonging to Cominex, who were synthesizing anti-COVID molecules. And due to the much slower success than we expected, we decided to turn to the space. I will give you later an example. The second category is where we do have already solution in the Earth, but we expecting that in the space we can improve the existing best solution. Again, going back to my chemistry field, there are so many possible opportunities to synthesize better drug candidates or better polymers, which are helping in solving the transportation problems in space, producing better formulations for drugs, cosmetics, and other items in the life science. And these are it's spread, and there are more or less accepted solutions to use space chemistry, the space itself for these purposes. I would not limit the effect of the space to microgravity, but it is worth to mention that the irradiation is very important over there. The inexpensive availability of the almost zero temperature, and what is the most important, that we don't know enough about how the space is influencing chemistry. And we just have got some surprising experience on that. Interesting question. You see that what are the private actors need to trigger more business and for the terrestrial opportunities? I do believe that the ESA's Downstream Gateway may help from that respect of giving a kind of pre-organization for the private corporations and triggering them, promoting them to form a kind of European private space actors cluster or association. This is not existing, and it is just being formed in the United States, as we knowing no sign that there will be something in Japan or in Australia. So it's a field where Europe can be the very first, I do believe.
Thank you. So can you tell us how InnoStudio has concretely used the European facilities, and tell us more about some of the recent success stories that you started introducing?
Yeah, well, going back to the problem that we need better solutions for COVID, well, what we do have. You see, the new waves are just coming, and we are somehow beyond what the virus is producing and what the virus is surprising us. So one of the best drug used for healing COVID patients is the remdesivir. You certainly have heard about that, but it is less known that remdesivir composition includes only 3% of active principle, the drug material. The remaining part is just a kind of, so to say, clatrat, which is providing the solubility of the drug, provides it that you can take it by the infusion. As a side effect of this large number of not active material, the remdesivir cannot be used for healing patients with serious kidney problems, serious liver or heart problems. There is a long list of symptoms where you cannot use it, and then we got an inquiry to try to improve the extend the applicability of the remdesivir. So we formed a kind of international anti-COVID space consortium with participation of medicinal chemists from the InnoStudio and the Cyclolab Incorporation, which is producing this Clatrat type material. It's a pharmaceutical company, and then on-orbit experimental specialists from the Japanese GEMS and from the European, the Belgian Space Application Services. And we designed some experiments, and with active participation of the SpaceX, with the ESA, who was providing the space on the ISS for us. And finally, with the help of the ISS, we were bringing experimental materials to the ISS. We were performing a number of experiments that was still in December. And by February, we got the results, 2 months we needed for the analysis. And we concluded with some very unexpected results, which is still, we don't really understanding. We needed to go to from the experimental chemist to turn to the theoretical chemist, because such experiments never were found during the 20 years long use of ISS for chemical purposes, and it looks like that they do have a significance which goes well beyond the solving these particular drug discovery problems. First of all, it can be generalized for solving some stability problems of existing mRNA vaccines. You know that they should store them in very low temperature, and this already patented, and in the early phase of commercialization innovation, we do believe that will help to a large number of pharmaceutical corporations here in the earth, with the problem that after 1 year, 2 years of development, after investing up to $1 billion to developing a new drug, they have to stop the development because the molecule turns to be not stable enough. There is an FDA ordered stability investigation, which is coming after the main activity checking of the molecule, and then if it is not stable, then essentially you can discard the molecule. So it looks like that space will help in that respect. One very important added value for the pharmaceutical industry, going back to the question of Emmanuel Mondon from Munich, is that we realized how important is the standardization of this complex space experimentation. Standardization is very common in the pharmaceutical industry and distinguishes the high quality corporations to the low ones. But de facto, no one was really dealing with how to standardize pharmaceutical experiments on the ISS, including to transfer the material there and bringing back. This is quite a complex procedure, and we are on the verge to form an international standardization committee and a standardization consortium in the hope that the standards will promote to have more life science experimentation on the ISS and hopefully also in the Space Rider over next year.
Thank you very much for these very concrete examples and success stories, and for sharing your experience. And you've actually given me a great transition to our next speaker, Vincenzo Giorgio, who is the CEO of Altec. We are actually going to start with talking about the Space Rider. And so Now turning to you, which markets do you think could benefit rather quickly from the use and exploitation of the Space Rider? And what value could Space Rider bring to companies or research organizations?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. And you're right, it's the right moment talking on Space Rider. The first thing that we should say is that Space Rider is filling a gap as far as the existing platforms are on the market. And this is a very typical example of transition between institutional and commercial. So for those who does not know, the Space Rider is ESA-driven project. The first flight, the maiden flight, will be ESA driven, and then there will be a following number of flights, 5 by specification, in which a reusable vehicle, and this is another important keyword, will be used and will become, let's say, in a way, going from institutional to commercial. The platform itself offers a variety of advantages compared with the different other platforms. First of all, you can pre-select the orbit depending on the payload needs. You can access and see the deep space as well as the Earth, depending on, of course, on the instrument needs. There is quite a good fine-pointing capability. There is an exceptional microgravity level, and this is due to the fact that compared with the International Space Station, the overall environment is less noisy, and which is very important for a payload developer, you can also have late access on the vehicle. So as a matter of fact, one may see Space Rider as being like the ISS. However, it's much simpler. There are much less procedure to follow because, of course, the safety rules of the ISS, being human rated, are completely different. And the answer to the question, what can be done, is actually, we have seen in our experience so far that there is no real limitation on the type of experimentation you can do. We did organize in 2019, so we are in a pre-COVID era, a workshop specifically on Space Rider to try to understand what kind of response we could have from the, let me call the non-space world. And we got some 160 plus participants coming from completely different industry, winery industry, chocolate producers. I wonder why, but okay, they came. Technology developers. So everybody was very curious, and most of those people were coming from the R&D department of those companies. They were trying to understand what could be done better, what could make them an advantage. And here come something that Luisa mentioned at the beginning, which is the ESA rules. It goes without saying that we would not have Space Rider without ESA. And this is a fact, and everybody agrees with it. But I would go one step further. We need ESA to show to the non-space world what kind of advantages those people may get. Then it's up to us, service company, to follow them, to accompany them, and to make things happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If we go, at the broader picture of innovation in microgravity, so from your perspective of industrialist, what should European industry do to remain competitive and to play a key role in this rapidly evolving market?
Okay, yes, I mean, I will not repeat the type of application. This has been extensively being said by the colleague before. What I would point out is what we industry have to do. And there is a very specific point. We need to adapt to the time to market of non-space company, which I tell you is completely different from our time to market, meaning that we have to make sure that the needs, starting from the needs of those people, we are able to satisfy their needs in a very short time, having the possibility of having a rapid and cheap opportunity to fly. And I would even add a specific point. We don't need those people becoming expert of space activity. We need to tell them what to do. So that's why, and this is one of the role of Altec, is to accompany them, to tell them what they have to do, to tell them what they cannot do, and to gather then the essence of the data after the experiment is done. And in addition to that, I would say that we would not fix ourselves to a single platform. So depending on the needs, there are many platforms that can satisfy the needs. Let me just make a few examples. If one experiment needs a couple of minutes microgravity, then the Virgin Galactic space vehicle can definitely offer, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes of a very nice microgravity at a price which is less than $250,000 because it's one equivalent seat in the model they are putting in place. So we don't need to go on the ISS to make an experiment that needs 4 minutes. Different story is if you need a couple of weeks and then Space Rider better fits with it, or even more, if you need a human participation to an experiment, of course, you need to go on the International Space Station. So the industry, we as an industry, we have to understand the real need, and we have to select what the best opportunities are going to be for those industries.
So it's clear about the diversity of platforms. How do you see the role of the ISS in that overall picture?
Well, it is a reality that ISS is having a fantastic role, and we have a number of platforms, either institutional or non-institutional. So we have an example here. We participated to the manufacturing of the Bishop, which is being used quite extensively. Of course, we have European platform as well. So therefore, we know that those platforms, once they are available, are being used. So the ISS still remains a fantastic test bench where to go. Of course, as I said before, we need to make affordable the access to the ISS, and this is becoming a reality also because if we look at what is happening in US, ISS is in a sort of transition between a very institutional driven platform to a partially commercial, and likely in the future it will become completely commercial. So we all know what is happening with the Axiom having gained the possibility to have private modules. And we are particularly happy here in Torino because we are going to build the module for Axiom, and we are going to train the astronauts of Axiom in the European part of the International Space Station, meaning that this would allow a reduction of cost. This would allow very likely the possibility to have a larger access in terms of experiment. Of course, I mean, they also talk about tourism, but let's concentrate now on experiment. And what we see is that many industry are telling us, what do we improve in our product if we do something in space? Answer is not obvious. Sometimes you need to make the experiment first, and this is the answer we gave to one winery production in Italy who told us, what if I put some Barolo in space? And we told them, I have no idea what it will be at the end after 6 months when you return it back on the Earth. It can be much better, but it can be much worse. So it's up to you to try, and we will see the results later on. In any case, good or bad, it will be very expensive, those kind of Barolo, yes.
Clearly. Just one last question regarding the business models. So how do you see the evolution? You mentioned the fact that the ISS could indeed move towards more private actors. How do you see the evolution of the business models for this overall, microgravity and LEO economy?
And the point is just that one. So today we have been used to the fact that there were a set of specification, therefore the production of large facility and the utilization of it. Probably the model will develop having an intermediate level, which is a service company, and this is the one we are aiming to, who has the duty, first of all, to identify needs which are far from space and belongs to very difficult, different field of application, and then to bring it into the space. So this kind of intermediate level, let's say, I would say it has not existed so far in our typical way of doing business. Now it is going to become important, which also requires a level of competencies which is rather different from the one we are used to, because we will need to talk with people that have no clue about space and we have no clue about their specific product. So it is, in the terms of business model, the service company is going to become very important in the future, and I guess that in the far future, those service companies will also become owner of the platform themselves. So therefore, they will buy the platform, they will use the platform. In a way, I mean, I'm not reinventing the wheel, is what telecommunication has done in the past 50 years. There were somebody building a telecom satellite, and now the operators buy the satellite and operates it, selling the final services.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo. Thank you. And also thanks to all the speakers for keeping the time. I think we're now at the end of this first round table, and I understand that the questions from the floor will be taken after the second panel. So I would like first to thank very much our 4 distinguished speakers today and for their very complimentary views on the question of commercialization and microgravity innovation. And I will now pass back the floor to Donatella. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And so I would like to thank also all the panelists for your participation. I don't know if there were some question, Julia, from the public for the first panel that we received.
Yes, Donatella, sorry. Actually, yes, and we received one specific question for Bernard and Luisa. So the question would be for, as I was mentioning, for Luisa and for Bernard. Under what paradigm you believe that political interest and economic aim can be assembled to respond to this view offered for the future, which includes space? And the second part of the question would be how you believe that security matters will be projected in this expansion of activity into space?
So what I can say is that there are 2 possible paradigms at the moment, which are, one is business and the other one is sustainability, meaning usually the political support comes in when you have a business. You can quote, you can refer to a possible business behind. Therefore, the political sector and the public sector is happier to support. Having said that, I hope that the public sector will see and is starting to see that also keeping sustainability of the world as environment economic impact. We have used the environment, being it our earth, being it our space, is the so-called tragedy of the commons, and without assigning an economical value to these resources. And this has been a dramatic mistake, in my opinion, from a political world, and possibly it will change in the future. So there are 2, one is business and the other one is sustainability, because sustainability, not taking care of sustainability, has a fundamental and important economical impact.
Bernard, do you have anything to add on that point?
No, I must say I didn't understand the question acoustically, so, but I'm sure Luisa has perfectly answered it.
Okay, so now I have to announce, I have to thank you all again. I have to announce a few minutes break to solve a technical issue, and we reconvene at 5 to 11 for the second panel. Thank you again for all of you, and I hope you can stay with us for the next panel. See you in a few minutes.